You are no longer my daughter. That was the last thing my mother said before locking me out. I was 17, alone and unloved, but what I built from that moment, no one saw coming. You are no longer my daughter. That's the last thing my mother said before she slammed the door in my face. My name is Skye. I'm 28 now. I run a shelter for runaway girls. But when I was 17, I had nowhere to go. I spent the first night of my new life sleeping on a park bench with a backpack full of clothes and a heart that felt like it had been ripped in half. It all happened the night I came out to my parents. I wasn't even planning to. I wasn't ready. But my mom found texts on my phone from a girl I was seeing. Nothing explicit, just vulnerable, raw, soft things. She read them out loud like they were a list of crimes. My dad didn't say a word. He just stood there, arms crossed, jaw tight. My mom's voice didn't shake. It was cold. Final. This house is for God-fearing people. We don't shelter confusion or sin. Pack your things. I laughed at first. I thought it was a scare tactic. Until I saw my suitcase already packed by the front door. She had gone through my closet. My drawers. My life. The cold outside hit harder than I expected. But not as hard as the silence that followed. The phone never rang. No texts. No apology. I kept checking. I kept hoping. They never looked back. That first night, I walked until my feet blistered. I didn't even cry. Not yet. I think my brain hadn't caught up to what was happening. I sat on a bench near the train station, legs tucked under me, hugging my backpack like it could protect me. I didn't sleep. Just watched the cars pass. Watched people live their lives while mine had been ripped away. And when the sky turned pink with morning, I realized no one was coming to save me. I always thought homeless was something that happened to other people. Drug addicts. Runaways. Strangers on street corners with cardboard signs. I never thought it would be me. The girl who got straight A's. The choir kid. The one who volunteered at food drives with her church group. The girl who used to bake cookies with her mom every Sunday after service. That version of me died the moment I stepped outside and the door locked behind me. The first few nights I wandered. I didn't know the city that well, at least not at night. The world changes when you're not part of it anymore. Everything feels louder. Scarier. More real. The shadows stretch longer. The people move faster. You start to notice who looks at you and who doesn't. I had $8 in my wallet. I spent $3.75 on a soggy gas station sandwich and kept the rest like it was sacred. The second night it rained. Hard. I took shelter in a 24-hour laundromat. The kind with flickering lights and the smell of bleach baked into the walls. I found a seat in the corner, curled up in a ball, and pretended to wait for laundry that didn't exist. A woman came in around midnight, glanced at me, and slid $1 into the snack machine without saying a word. She didn't smile. She didn't stay. She just left a bag of chips next to me on the folding table. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. My body was numb. My throat was dry. It's a strange thing, feeling grateful while also being humiliated. I stayed there until 5 a.m., then slipped out before anyone could tell me to leave. By the fifth night, I hadn't showered. My hair stuck to my scalp. My socks were damp. I hadn't eaten a full meal in days. I started sleeping behind the library, under the overhang where the security lights didn't reach. I used my backpack as a pillow and told myself stories until I passed out. I kept thinking this has to be temporary. They'll call. They'll come looking for me. But the phone stayed silent. By the seventh day, I stopped hoping. I started scavenging food from the trash bins behind the sandwich shop. Not moldy stuff, just wrapped leftovers they threw out at close. I felt disgusting. But hunger has a way of killing pride. I remember standing in the bathroom of a gas station one night, washing my face in cold water from the sink, trying not to look at my reflection. My cheeks were hollowing. My eyes had bags under them. I looked older. Harder. Like someone I wouldn't trust. I said to myself, "You're disappearing, Skye. And no one cares." And that hurt more than the hunger. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was the realization that I could vanish off the face of the earth, and the people who raised me wouldn't flinch, wouldn't search, wouldn't grieve. The only thing that kept me going was a promise I made in that bathroom mirror. If I make it through this, I'll make sure no kid ever feels this invisible again. I didn't know how. I didn't know when. But I clung to that sentence like a rope in a storm. A few days later, I met Nate. He changed everything. He found me sitting outside a youth center, hunched over, trying to steal some Wi-Fi to text the only friend I had left in the world. He offered me a bottle of water and a bagel. But more than that, he offered eye contact. Not pity, not judgment, just kindness. He asked my name. When I told him, his face softened. Skye. That's beautiful. Do you have a place to stay? I froze. Part of me wanted to lie, say yes, keep drifting. But I was so tired. So hollow. No, I whispered. He nodded once. Okay. We'll figure it out. That sentence cracked something open in me. Not because of the words, but because he meant them. No one had said anything like that to me in weeks. Nate brought me to a temporary shelter. It wasn't much: bunk beds, paper-thin blankets, a shared bathroom. But it was warm. It was safe. There were no locks on the doors, but I slept deeper that night than I had in a month. I cried into my pillow when I realized no one would be banging on the door to throw me out. That was the night I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, this didn't have to be the end of me. The shelter wasn't permanent, but it was the first place I didn't feel like a ghost. Nate visited often. He wasn't a caseworker or a cop. Just a guy with kind eyes and too many keys on his belt. I later found out he was a volunteer who used to be homeless himself. That explained the way he looked at us, like people, not statistics. Still, I didn't trust him. Not really. When you've been abandoned by the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally, it rewires your brain. You stop believing in rescue. You start assuming every smile is a setup. He didn't push. He never asked why I was on the street. He didn't press me with questions about my family or what I did to get kicked out. He just showed up. Sometimes with food. Sometimes just to sit with us and listen. One night, I found myself sitting with him in the common area after lights out. It was raining hard. That weird, sad kind of rain that makes you feel like the sky's tired too. He handed me a hot chocolate and said, "You ever feel like the world forgot you on purpose?" I looked up at him, caught off guard. And before I could stop myself, I laughed, one sharp, broken sound. "Yeah," I said. "All the time." He nodded like he understood. "I used to feel like that too. But the world didn't forget you, Skye. It just didn't deserve you yet." That hit me in a place I didn't know was still raw. No one had ever said anything like that to me. I'd spent the last month feeling like trash in a system that didn't care if I lived or died. But now someone was telling me I was too much for the world, not too little. And I didn't know what to do with that. So I cried. For the first time since the night I was thrown out, I just let it all come up, sobbing into a paper cup of lukewarm cocoa while Nate sat silently beside me, handing me tissues without looking away. I told him everything that night. The girl I had loved quietly. The texts my mom read. The suitcase by the door. The sentence that replayed in my head every night like a nightmare on loop: "You are no longer my daughter." He didn't interrupt. Didn't try to fix it. When I was done, he just said, "That wasn't your fault. You were brave enough to be honest." They weren't strong enough to accept it. I didn't believe it right away. But something in me shifted. It's funny the way kindness works when you've lived without it. It feels dangerous at first. Like a trick. Like the moment you lean into it, it'll disappear. But Nate didn't disappear. He helped me get into a transitional program for teens. It was run by an older woman named Diane who had the energy of a strict grandma, tough love, but with hot meals and real conversations. I moved into a group home with 3 other girls. All of us were different versions of the same story: kicked out, left behind, forgotten. But somehow, in that tiny apartment with bunk beds and peeling wallpaper, I started to remember what it felt like to belong. We cooked together. Took turns cleaning. Complained about chores like a real family. One girl, Tamika, braided my hair for the first time in months and said, "You're kinda cute when you're not scowling." I started to laugh again. Not the polite kind. The belly kind. And I began writing. At first it was just journal entries, scraps of pain and questions. Then poems. Then longer pieces. Pages and pages of memories I was afraid to forget. I wrote about the cold of that first night. The way the rain smelled outside the laundromat. The taste of stale chips and kindness. The quiet grace of someone who shows up, not to save you, but to see you. It became therapy. Then purpose. One night, Diane handed me an old, beat-up laptop she said someone had donated. "I heard you've been writing," she said with a smirk. "Maybe it's time to stop hiding it." I didn't sleep that night. I typed until my fingers ached. For the first time in forever, I felt useful. Not broken. Not damaged. Just a girl with something to say. But with healing came fear. I had made it off the street. I had a roof. Food. Safety. But what if it all disappeared again? What if I wasn't strong enough to keep it? What if I still didn't deserve it? That doubt followed me everywhere. In the silence before sleep. In the mirror before interviews. In the way I hesitated before calling myself okay. And that's when Nate said something that stuck with me for the rest of my life. You don't have to be unbroken to be worth something. You just have to keep showing up. I wish I could tell you the healing was a straight line. That once I got off the street, everything clicked into place. But it wasn't like that. 6 months into the program, I crashed. It started small, missing a group meeting here, skipping chores there. I started isolating. The house got quieter around me. People tiptoed. I kept saying I was tired. But the truth was darker than that. I started hearing my mother's voice in my head again. Every time I looked in the mirror. You're disgusting. God doesn't love you. No one will ever want someone like you. Even after everything I built, food in the fridge, a bed to sleep in, people who smiled when I walked in the room, I still felt like I didn't belong. It hit hardest one night after a girl in our house got a phone call from her dad. They talked for 20 minutes, laughing, crying. After she hung up, she said, "I think we're gonna be okay." I nodded, smiled, then went to the bathroom and cried until I threw up. Because I knew my phone would never ring. No one from my family was coming back for me. That night, I packed my bag. Old habits die hard. I left a note for Diane, just 3 words, "I'm sorry. Goodbye." I didn't have a plan, just the weight of old pain and the belief that maybe I was never meant to be saved. I walked for hours. Cold air cutting through my jacket. I passed the train station. The laundromat. The bench near the library. It all looked exactly the same. But I didn't. I wasn't that same girl anymore. And that terrified me more than anything because it meant I had something to lose now. At sunrise, I sat on the steps of the youth center and stared at the sky, completely empty inside. That's where Nate found me. Again. He sat down next to me like he had 100 times before. Didn't say a word for 5 minutes. Then, "You're scared." That makes sense. Wanting to run is normal. I still want to run sometimes. I looked at him with red eyes and said, "I thought I was better. I thought I could handle it." He nodded. "Healing's not a promise. It's a process. You're still in it." I broke down. Right there on the steps. In front of people walking by. I didn't care anymore. And Nate? He didn't give me a speech. He just said, "Come home, Skye." He called it home. And for the first time, I believed him. I went back that morning. I unpacked my bag. I made my bed. I wrote in my journal. You tried to run. But you came back. And that, I decided, was strength. I never planned to become anyone's role model. I didn't feel strong. Or wise. Or anything close to healed. I still had days where I flinched at loud voices. Nights where I woke up in a sweat, reaching for a backpack that wasn't there anymore. But something had shifted since the day I came back. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was listening. Watching. There was a new girl at the house, barely 16. She arrived with nothing but a broken phone and shoes 2 sizes too big. Wouldn't speak. Wouldn't eat with the rest of us. Slept with a jacket on, zipped all the way to her chin, even under the covers. Her name was Jordan. One night, I found her crying in the stairwell. Quietly. Head between her knees. I didn't say anything. Just sat down next to her. We stayed there in silence for almost an hour. Eventually, I whispered, "It's okay to be mad. Or scared. Or both." She didn't answer. But the next night, she asked if I wanted to play cards. That's how it started. Soon, the other girls started coming to me. Not because I had the answers, but because I didn't pretend to. I just listened. Like Nate had done for me. Like Diane still did. They started calling me Big Sis. And slowly I started to see it. Maybe I had something to offer. Not perfection. Not a fix. But presence. Consistency. Proof that the pain didn't have to be the end of their story. At Diane's suggestion, I started mentoring officially. Volunteering with outreach teams. Helping with intake interviews. Sitting on plastic chairs next to kids who reminded me too much of myself at 17, eyes full of fight, hands full of nothing. Each story shattered me a little more. But each story also built me back. Because I wasn't broken anymore, I was useful. One girl, Tasha, told me I thought I was trash. But you sat with me like I was a person. No one's ever done that. I went home that night and cried. Not out of sadness. Out of knowing. I had found my calling. Not a job. Not a career. A reason. To show up. To stay. To be what I once needed so desperately and didn't have. And that was the night I wrote it on my mirror in lipstick. Be who you needed when you were alone. I saw it every morning after that. And every time I did, I showed up. The idea started as a joke. One night, we were sitting around the dinner table, me, Jordan, Tasha, a few others, and someone said, "Skye, when are you gonna open your own house? We'd all move in." Everyone laughed. But I didn't. Because deep down, I'd been thinking about it for months. What if there was a place just for girls like us? Not just beds and rules, but a real home. A place where no one had to explain why they flinched when someone raised their voice, or why they didn't eat certain foods, or why they kept their shoes on at night. A place built from love, not pity. That night, I wrote the words "Skye's Place" in my journal and underlined it twice. I started saving. Every paycheck, every little donation I could scrape together from odd jobs and part-time shifts. I applied for grants, met with nonprofits, took free business classes at the library. I was terrified. Who was I to run anything? But then I'd look around the shelter and see Jordan helping the new girl unpack, or Tasha walking someone to their therapy session. And I'd remember, I didn't have to be perfect. I just had to show up. Again. And again. And again. Diane saw me working late one night, surrounded by papers and post-it notes. She didn't say anything, just handed me a cup of tea and smiled. "You're going to do it," she said. "You've already started." It took 2 years. 2 years of setbacks, rejections, lost funding, sleepless nights, and one terrible landlord who tried to scam me out of our first lease. But in year 3, we opened. A small 2-story house with a wraparound porch and 6 twin beds. We painted the walls ourselves, soft yellow in the bedrooms, lavender in the common space. Jordan picked out the curtains. Tasha helped build the bookshelves. And we filled it with girls who had nowhere else to go. We taught them how to cook, budget, apply for jobs, write their own stories. We sat up late some nights just listening to music or watching old Disney movies with chipped mugs of cocoa. One night, after everyone had gone to bed, I stood in the kitchen, barefoot on the cool tile, staring at the table where we just finished dinner. There were plates still on the counter, laughter echoing in my ears. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a survivor. I felt like a builder. I had taken pain, rejection, silence, and turned it into walls and windows, into warmth, into family. And every time a new girl came through that front door, scared and shaking, I'd meet her with the same words Nate once gave me. "Come in. You're safe now." Last week, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. Just my name. Inside was a folded sheet of paper. It was from my mother. 11 years. Not a call. Not a message. Nothing until now. Her handwriting was smaller than I remembered. Careful. Like she was afraid the words might break. "Skye, I heard about what you're doing. Someone from our old church sent me a link to a video about your shelter. I watched it 3 times. I'm sorry. For everything. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I see you now. I see what I refused to see back then. There was more. But I couldn't read it all at once. My hands were shaking. I sat on the porch of Skye's place, the letter in my lap, the sun setting behind me, listening to the sound of the girls inside laughing over burnt cookies. And I thought, I'm not that 17-year-old anymore. I'm not the girl who begged for love that came with conditions. I'm not the girl who had to hide to survive. I'm not the daughter they wanted. But I became the woman I needed. And maybe that's enough. I never wrote her back. Not out of spite. But because I don't need anything from her anymore. Not validation. Not guilt. Not even closure. My healing never depended on her. It came from the nights I stayed. The mornings I got back up. The girls who taught me how to love again by letting me love them. There's a photo on the wall in our hallway, me, Diane, Nate, and the first 4 girls who called this place home. We're standing on the porch, paint still fresh on the walls, smiles too wide, eyes full of something that looks a lot like hope. Every time I pass it, I feel it again, that quiet, solid truth I never thought I'd find. I'm not broken. I'm building. And every girl who walks through our door, she doesn't just get shelter. She gets a future. Because someone finally stayed long enough to believe she deserved one.